Unaware his wife owned the $800,000 home, husband pushed out his sick wife and threw a trash bag at her. What she did next crushed him. He didn't just betray her. He stood in the doorway of the very house he thought belonged to him, gripping her arm while she trembled with fever, and shoved his sick wife into the cold night like she was a burden he couldn't wait to get rid of. Then, without hesitation, he tossed a trash bag filled with her clothes at her feet, as if that was all she meant to him. That same night, Emily Carter, weak, coughing, barely able to stand, was left shaking on the porch he forced her onto, all while her husband Andrew stood inside scrolling through messages from another woman. Messages that told him to make space, to get rid of the dead weight, to prove he was ready for a new life. He thought he was choosing freedom. He thought the house was his. He thought Emily had nowhere else to go. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that the $800,000 home he just kicked her out of had belonged to Emily long before he entered her life. That upstairs, inside a wooden box her parents left her, was the deed with her name printed in bold letters. And later, on a tiny USB drive she tucked beside it, she would store security footage, time-stamped and clear, showing every second of what he did to her. Andrew believed he had all the power. He believed he had won. He believed Emily would break quietly. What he never imagined was this. The woman he threw out while sick had already gathered proof, allies, and legal strength. And what she did next didn't just turn the tables, it crushed everything Andrew built his life on, piece by piece, in broad daylight. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you're watching without subscribing, it's like letting Emily's courage fade into the background of her own story. When you click that button, you stand with every person who was underestimated, every partner betrayed, and every quiet soul planning their comeback. Please subscribe now. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The wooden box almost slipped from Emily Carter's hands. For a moment she froze, heart thudding, breath sharp, as if the entire weight of her past was about to crash open onto the floor. Then she steadied herself, fingers tightening around it, with the care one uses when holding something that can't be replaced. The early morning sun warmed the living room, but inside her chest a quiet storm churned. Emily, 32 years old, gentle-eyed and soft-spoken, was used to carrying storms alone. She placed the box on the coffee table and drew in a slow breath. Her home, her parents' home, stood silent around her. The hardwood floors they once polished together still carried faint marks from their old furniture. The fireplace still held the stone her father carved with her initials when she was 10. She had inherited everything at 24, after losing them both only months apart. The house had been fully paid for long before she was born, passed through generations, protected like a family heartbeat. Her father had insisted that the house be more than walls and memories. So years ago, he'd installed a simple security system, discreet cameras at the doors, a small recorder tucked away upstairs. Emily rarely thought about it. It was just another part of the house, humming quietly in the background of her life. And she never told anyone, not fully, not even Andrew. The framed picture in her hand trembled slightly. It was a photo of her parents taken on the front porch, laughing, holding cups of lemonade. She lifted it toward the wall, adjusting it with both hands, wanting it perfectly straight. Her mother used to say, "If something matters, you honor it, even the little things." Emily lived by that, even when no one noticed, especially when no one noticed. She stepped back and studied the picture, her expression softening into something warm and sad at the same time. She knew most people would cling to an $800,000 home like a trophy, brag about it, wave it in people's faces to gain respect. But Emily wasn't built that way. She believed love was shown through action, not assets. She wanted her marriage to Andrew to stand on trust, not on the value of the land it sat on. So she kept the ownership quiet. She kept the deed locked inside the wooden box her father carved for her and sealed on her 21st birthday. A box he told her she would open only when she truly needed strength. Her thumb brushed the lid, lingering over the grain. Inside lay her past, her security, her proof. Beneath the folded documents rested a slim USB drive her father once used to back up important files from the security system. a small, ordinary object that had quietly sat there for years, waiting. Emily barely remembered the last time she touched it. To her, it was just another reminder of how carefully her parents planned for her future. But she rarely touched any of it. She didn't want it to define her life. She wanted love to do that, even when that belief made her blind. Emily exhaled and reached for the small brass key on the table. Her hand hovered, unsure, as if the simple act of locking the box shut again carried a weight far heavier than the box itself. A moment of hesitation flickered in her eyes, something deep inside warning her she might soon need what was inside. She brushed the thought away. Not today, she told herself. Not yet. With a soft click, she turned the key. A footstep sounded behind her. Andrew Carter, 35, her husband of 4 years, strolled into the living room wearing his usual half-awake expression, tall, charismatic, the kind of man who knew how to charm people with easy smiles. Yet lately his smiles rarely reached his eyes. He wasn't cruel, not openly, but he carried a simmering frustration beneath the surface, something restless, something hungry for a life he believed he deserved, but hadn't earned. Andrew had moved into this house after they married. He never signed a mortgage, there wasn't one, but he'd always spoken about their place as if paperwork didn't matter. Over time, Emily let him. It felt kinder than correcting him. Emily knew he struggled with financial pressures. His job in sales was unstable. Commissions up one month, down the next. She carried most of the household cost, quietly covering bills he forgot about, loans he didn't want to face, repairs he promised to handle later. She never complained. She wanted their home to feel peaceful. Andrew glanced at the wooden box on the table. "What's in that thing anyway?" he asked, not unkindly, but with a rough edge that hadn't been there years ago. Emily's heart tightened. "Just family things." She didn't lie. She just didn't explain. He shrugged, uninterested, already distracted by his phone buzzing. He didn't notice her stiffen. He didn't notice her step slightly in front of the box, almost shielding it. He didn't notice how her hand shook when she lifted it away. "Whatever," he said, tapping out a message. "I'll be in the kitchen. Got a few things to sort before work." He walked off. His phone lit up again. Emily stared after him for a long moment. A strange tug twisted in her stomach, an uneasiness she couldn't name. She had always trusted easily, given freely, loved without measuring. But something was changing. She could feel it, even if she couldn't see it yet. Her gaze drifted back to the box. The things inside it had saved her once, when she was a grieving 24-year-old with nowhere else to turn. They might have to save her again. She touched the lid one more time, fingertips gentle, almost trembling. And in the quiet of the room, with warm sunlight framing her silhouette, a soft voice rose inside her, a warning she didn't yet understand. She would need the truth hidden in that box sooner than she thought. The kitchen fell silent the moment Andrew slammed the refrigerator shut. The sharp thud cut through the house like a warning, rattling the glasses on the counter and making Emily stop halfway through the doorway. His frustration was loud, even though he hadn't spoken a single word yet. Evening light spilled across the kitchen table, bathing everything in a warm glow that didn't match the tension in the air. Andrew Carter, 35, leaned against the counter with his phone in hand, jaw tight. His polished charm, the smooth smile he used around friends and coworkers, was nowhere to be found. Instead, he wore the restless look of a man who felt cheated by life. He'd just come home from another long day at the office, another meeting where promotions went to someone else, another paycheck that didn't match the lifestyle he pictured in his head. When he noticed Emily, he quickly flipped his phone face down on the table. "Hey," he said, voice softening just enough to sound normal. But Emily had already seen the slight tremor in his fingers. Something was stirring inside him, something dark and impatient. She moved into the room, still feeling the weight of the wooden box she'd locked just hours earlier. Her voice was gentle. "Everything okay?" Andrew gave a laugh that carried no humor. "Just tired, everything feels heavy lately." Emily stepped closer. At 32, her eyes held a quiet strength, the kind that made people feel safe. She had always believed that calm conversations could solve almost anything, and she still wanted to believe that, especially now, with Andrew acting more distant every week. "What happened?" she asked. He pushed a hand through his hair. Bills, work, you know how it is. He tapped the table, impatient. Sometimes I wish we didn't have to worry about money. This house, it's old, Em, expensive to maintain. If it wasn't such a burden, maybe we could breathe a little. Her heart tightened. There it was again, the same line he had repeated for months. The house is too expensive. The house costs too much. The house is holding us back. Emily heard the familiar refrain, but she also knew the truth. There was no mortgage payment strangling them every month. The real weight came from Andrew's credit card debt, his car loan, the gadgets he liked to buy to feel successful. The house required taxes, repairs, utilities, normal things, but she covered most of those quietly. Andrew spoke like he owned it as much as she did, but he didn't. She had inherited it long before meeting him, paid in full, no bank involved, and still she let him believe they were in it together because she wanted him to feel equal. She wanted their marriage to stand on love, not financial advantage. Yet every time he complained about the house, Emily felt a crack open inside her, a quiet echo reminding her that he didn't really see what she carried or what she sacrificed. Andrew sat at the table and exhaled hard. I work so hard, Em. I've been stuck in the same position for years. Meanwhile, everyone else I know is moving forward. People with less talent than me are getting promotions, buying new houses. His voice sharpened. Sometimes I feel like I deserve more, like life owes me something. Emily paused at that. It wasn't the first time he said it, but tonight the words hit differently. He wasn't just frustrated, he felt entitled. It was the kind of belief that made people dangerous without even meaning to be. She took a seat across from him. We're doing the best we can, she said softly, and we have a home. We have each other. Andrew scoffed, not cruelly, but with an agitation he didn't bother hiding. Yeah, but it's not enough. Not for the life I pictured. Emily studied him quietly. She saw the man she married, the charming, ambitious dreamer who once made her laugh and left her little notes on the fridge. But tonight she also saw a new side of him, one shaped by quiet resentment, one that had been growing silently each time he failed to meet his own expectations. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Sometimes I think about what I'd do if I had everything I wanted. His eyes flickered with something she couldn't name. Just imagine it, Em. A fresh start, a better house, a better life. Emily's breath caught. Something inside her, instinct or fear, urged her to ask a question she'd never dared to ask before. Andrew, she whispered, do you ever wonder what you'd do if you actually had everything you wanted? Andrew froze. Just half a second. Barely noticeable. But to Emily it was enough. His eyes darted to the phone on the table. Face down, screen glowing faintly from an unread message, and then back to her. That moment, that pause, that flicker of panic, it told her more than any confession could. Emily swallowed hard. She suddenly felt the room shrink around her, her pulse tightening as the evening light dimmed. Andrew forced a smile. What kind of question is that? He said lightly. Just talking. But the charm in his voice was too quick, too polished, like a mask slipping back into place. Emily looked down at her hands, steadied her breath, and tried to quiet the uneasy whisper inside her chest. A whisper telling her that something was already unfolding behind her back, a whisper she wished she didn't recognize. And as Andrew reached for his phone again, flipping it toward him with a careful hand, Emily noticed something she hadn't seen before. A new contact name at the top of the screen, a name she didn't recognize, saved with a little star beside it, as if it meant something special. And tomorrow that name would become the first crack in her world. Emily's cough tore through the silence like a sharp crack of thunder. It came out of nowhere, violent, painful, shaking her whole body, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Her hand shot to her chest as she doubled over, gasping. The glass of water on her nightstand rattled from how hard she trembled beneath the blanket. The intensity of it stole the air from the room. Her vision blurred, her throat burned. A cold sweat broke across her forehead, and she knew instantly what it was. She had felt this before. Her mother had suffered from the same respiratory illness, one that came suddenly, stayed long, and demanded rest and careful monitoring. Emily had spent nights as a child listening to her mother fight for breath, praying quietly she would recover. Those memories lived inside her still, deep and heavy. And whenever Emily herself fell sick, that old fear came back like a shadow wrapping around her lungs. Tonight, the fear came fast. Her body was weak, her breathing reduced to shallow, painful pulls. The bedside lamp cast a dim yellow glow across the room as she sank deeper into the blankets, trying to steady herself. A soft wheeze escaped her lips. Emily hated the sound of it. It made her feel fragile, small, alone. She pressed a hand to her forehead and winced. She was burning up. A fever was settling in. She needed help. She knew she did. Just some medicine or warm tea, or even someone to sit with her, someone to remind her she wasn't fighting this alone. Earlier that day, she'd texted her best friend Hannah. "Not feeling great. Chest feels tight again. I'll rest tonight and see how I am tomorrow." Hannah had replied with a string of worried messages, asking if she needed company. Emily told her no. She didn't want to worry anyone. She believed, hoped, it would pass with rest. Now, as another cough ripped through her, she wished she had said yes. She called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Andrew?" No answer. She tried again, louder this time. "Andrew? Can you come here?" Down the hallway, she heard faint footsteps. Then silence. Emily coughed again, harder, grabbing the edge of the blanket as the room tilted. Her heart thudded with fear. Illness made her feel like she was losing control, like the worst memories of her childhood were pressing in on her all at once. She needed him. She needed support. She needed her husband. The bedroom door opened a crack. Andrew's silhouette appeared, lit from behind by the glow of his phone. He didn't step closer. He didn't rush to her side. He lingered in the doorway, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone as if it were more important than the sick woman in front of him. "You okay?" he asked. But the words sounded mechanical, like something he was supposed to say, not something he cared about. Emily tried to speak but fell into another coughing fit. Her voice broke. "Can you sit with me?" Andrew's phone buzzed. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 times back to back. He glanced down at the screen, and for the first time that night, a real expression formed on his face. A smirk. He typed quickly, almost too quickly, fingers moving with excitement he didn't bother to hide. Then he flipped the phone face down, just like he always did when he didn't want her to see something. Emily watched all of it through watery eyes. Her breath slowed, but not from comfort, from heartbreak. She wasn't used to being ignored when she was vulnerable. Her parents had always held her through nights like this. They had taught her gentleness, patience, empathy. Andrew had shown those things once when they first met. When she was sick early in their marriage, he used to bring her tea and sit through the night. But lately, his kindness felt like something he took off and on like a jacket. Emily whispered again, "I feel really sick." Andrew finally walked inside, but he didn't touch her, didn't check her temperature, didn't sit down. He stood near the edge of the bed, shifting his weight like he had somewhere else to be. "Just get some rest," he said. "You'll be fine. Probably just a flare-up." Another buzz, then another, then another. He lifted the phone slightly and peeked. His smirk returned. Emily's heart squeezed at the sight, not from jealousy, but from the quiet, painful awareness that she was slowly losing the person she thought she had built a life with. Her breathing grew heavier, her body weaker. She leaned back into the pillows, her fingers trembling as she pulled the blanket higher. "Could you bring me some water?" she asked softly. And Andrew hesitated, as if the request itself was a burden. "I'll get it later," he said, already walking toward the door. "I need to answer something. I'll grab you something when I come back." Emily watched him leave. She heard him moving down the hall, the front door opening a few minutes later, the faint sound of his car engine starting. Her heart sank. He hadn't brought her water. He hadn't checked her again. He'd left her alone in the house while she struggled to breathe. Her chest tightened, her breasts turning shallow again. A wave of exhaustion rolled over her, mixing with fear, sadness, and something she didn't want to name yet. She lay back in the dim light, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Her mother once told her, sickness reveals the truth of relationships. Tonight, that truth hurt more than the illness itself. And Emily closed her eyes, fighting the heaviness dragging her downward. Unaware that tomorrow her sickness would become the excuse Andrew used to make a decision that would shatter everything she trusted. And the next message he answered wouldn't be from work. It would be from her. The moment Andrew shut his car door, his phone lit up with an incoming call. And the vibration was so forceful, it almost jumped out of his hand. He grabbed it quickly, breath tight, pulse racing. Vanessa. The same name that had appeared at the top of his screen at dinner. The same contact he'd saved with a star. Her name alone hit him with intensity, like a spark igniting everything tense inside him. He answered before the second ring. "What took you so long?" Vanessa snapped. Her voice was sharp, cold, and impatient, so different from Emily's soft tone that greeted him every morning. Vanessa always sounded like she was ready for a fight, ready to demand, ready to take. Andrew leaned back in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel with one hand. His car was parked in a grocery store lot, lights from the building casting a pale glow across his tense face. He told himself he was just going out to get something for Emily, but he'd driven straight here instead, because that's where his mind had already been all night. "I told you," Andrew muttered. "She wasn't asleep yet." Vanessa scoffed loud enough for him to pull the phone away from his ear. "She's always sick, always whining, always needing you. It's pathetic, Andrew." A flash of guilt flickered across his face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Vanessa had that effect on him. Her voice, her confidence, her boldness. She made him feel wanted, powerful, admired. She made him feel like the version of himself he wished the world could see. The version he didn't feel like at home. Andrew closed his eyes for a second, remembering how Emily looked earlier. Weak, trembling under the covers, asking him for water. He clenched his jaw. He didn't want to feel guilty. He didn't want to feel anything that made him doubt the choices he'd already started making. "Don't talk about her like that," he said softly, but without conviction. "Why not?" Vanessa shot back. "She slows you down. You're meant for better things. You told me yourself you're tired of feeling stuck." He swallowed hard. Vanessa always knew exactly which words hit his insecurities. And Andrew, who had always believed life cheated him of opportunities, absorbed every syllable. "There are people at work," she continued, lowering her voice now, becoming the Vanessa who lured him 6 months ago at that company event, "who laugh behind your back, you know. They say you'll never move up, that you're wasting your potential in that old house, playing nurse to a woman who drains you." Andrew's hand tightened around the steering wheel. He remembered that night 6 months ago at a work celebration when she flirted with him for the first time. She was bold, confident, dangerous. She told him she saw greatness in him. She slipped him her number, and he didn't delete it. He liked the way it felt. Her attention had wrapped around him like a warm rope. Vanessa sighed into the phone. "Andrew, you know I'm right. You're drowning where you are. And that house, her house, keeps pulling you down." He stiffened. "It's our house." "Is it?" she asked slowly, a mocking note sliding into her voice. "Please, she's soft. You're strong. She needs you to survive. You don't need her." Andrew leaned forward, elbows on the steering wheel, breathing heavily. The heat from the phone warmed his cheek, but it wasn't comforting. It felt like pressure, mounting, pushing, suffocating. "And I want you to have more," Vanessa continued. "I want to build a life with you, but I can't do that until you make space." Her words settled like stones in his chest. "Make space?" "Vanessa," he whispered, rubbing his forehead. "It's not that simple. We've got stuff, bills, the house. It's not like I can just walk away." "It is," she said firmly. "You keep saying you want a better life. Then start acting like it." He closed his eyes again, a storm swirling behind them. Vanessa lowered her voice even more. "If you loved me, Andrew, you'd stop living in her house." His heart slammed hard against his ribs. Her house. The words were sharp, cutting straight through him. Vanessa didn't know the truth, that the house wasn't shared, wasn't half his, wasn't something he had any legal claim to. She didn't know Emily inherited it long before he came into her life. And if Andrew was being honest, part of him didn't want her to know. Because admitting the house wasn't his would make him feel small again, powerless, dependent, everything he hated feeling. Vanessa's voice sliced through the silence. "Andrew, are you there?" He swallowed, throat dry. "Yeah. Good." She exhaled sharply. Then do what needs to be done. I'm not waiting forever. Andrew stared through the windshield at nothing, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger. His face was flushed, tense, conflicted. He knew Vanessa's demands were dangerous, selfish, manipulative. But her voice whispered to every insecure, greedy, frustrated part of him. Every part that wanted Emily's quiet world to stop holding him down. Andrew, Vanessa said softly, prove to me you're serious. His hand shook, and in the dim lot, with his phone glowing in his palm, a decision began to form. One he would pretend was forced on him, but one that had been building for months. A decision that would break everything. Back at home, Emily coughed in her sleep, unaware that tomorrow, her weakest moment would be the one Vanessa used to push Andrew over the edge. Emily barely had time to steady herself before Andrew burst through the front door. The impact reverberated through the house, shaking the frame as if a storm had slammed into it. Emily, still pale and trembling from her illness, clutched her glass of water so tightly it nearly slipped from her hands. Her heart jumped into her throat. Andrew's steps thundered across the floor, fast, angry, fueled by something she couldn't name. Andrew, she whispered, voice thin. What happened? Did you get my medicine? He didn't answer. He didn't even look at her. He stormed through the living room with a kind of rage she had never seen in him. His face was flushed with frustration, his breathing sharp, his fists clenching and unclenching like he had spent the entire drive trying to hold himself together and lost. Emily took a shaky step forward. I just needed help getting my medicine. Enough, he snapped, turning on her so abruptly she flinched. Enough, Emily. The harsh hallway light poured over them, making her look even smaller, her skin pale and damp from fever. She was still in her sleep shirt and thin leggings, socks barely gripping the floor. She tried to hold the glass steady, but her fingers trembled so badly the water rippled. I'm sick, she whispered. You're always sick, Andrew's voice exploded, echoing off the walls. Always weak, always needing something. I can't do this anymore. She blinked at him, confused, hurt, trying to understand how a simple request for help could ignite such fury. Her chest tightened painfully and a cough tore through her body. She bent forward, wincing, barely able to catch her breath, but Andrew didn't move toward her. He didn't steady her. He didn't comfort her. He stood there, breathing hard, replaying Vanessa's words in his mind. If you loved me, you'd stop living in her house. Make space. She holds you down. She keeps you stuck. Pressure, threat, ultimatum. Vanessa had made it clear, if he didn't act now, she was gone. And Andrew, terrified of losing the only person who fed his ego and made him feel powerful, convinced himself there was no time left to think. Tonight had to be the night he proved his loyalty to Vanessa. Andrew, Emily whispered between coughs, why are you acting like this? He ignored the softness in her voice, ignored the fear in her eyes, ignored the years she supported him silently. Instead, he saw her the way Vanessa had painted her, an obstacle, a weight, a reminder of his own failures. I'm done, he said. I'm tired of this, tired of you. Her breath hitched, more from pain than shock. He grabbed her arm, his grip rough, forceful. She gasped as cold panic shot through her body. Andrew, stop, please. She coughed again, her whole frame shaking, but he dragged her toward the front door. You need to leave, he said through clenched teeth. I can't take this anymore. I can't stay stuck here with you like this. Her feet struggled to keep up, her legs weak from fever. She felt like she was floating, her mind spinning from fear and illness. Please, she cried. I can't even stand properly. Just sit with me. For a minute. We can call a doctor. He yanked the door open. Cold night air rushed in, slapping her face and making her cough even harder. Her body jerked as another wave of pain hit her chest. Andrew, please, she begged, tears forming. Don't do this. But he didn't soften. He didn't hesitate. Before waking her fully earlier, he'd already gone into the bedroom closet, taking handfuls of her clothes and stuffing them into a trash bag. Shoes, sweaters, whatever his hands landed on. He'd done it quickly, his mind set on one goal, clear space. Now he grabbed that same trash bag, already packed, and tossed it at her feet. Clothes spilled out across the porch. Take your stuff and go, he said, voice icy. I'm done. Emily stared at the bag, realization hitting her like a blow. He planned this. Before she even asked for help, before he ever looked at how sick she really was tonight, he had been preparing to throw her out. Another cough shook her entire body, and she collapsed to her knees, clutching the railing for support. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with sweat from her fever. Andrew, she whispered, voice breaking. I don't understand. I don't care anymore, he said flatly. Her heart fractured at the words. He stepped back inside and, with one last look that wasn't really a look at all, slammed the door shut in her face. The echo rang through her bones. On the other side, she heard the deadbolt slide. The same lock that once made her feel safe now sealed her out of her own home. She curled forward, trembling violently, her breath shallow and ragged. She didn't even have the strength to stand. Her limbs felt numb, her vision blurred, the world spinning in painful swirls. Her phone sat on the entryway table inside, where she'd left it earlier to charge. Only a few feet away, but completely out of reach. The porch felt colder by the second. And then, quiet. A heavy, suffocating quiet. Emily lifted her eyes toward the upstairs window, toward the warm glow coming from her bedroom, toward the wooden box sitting safely inside. The box she had closed that morning, the box holding the deed, the box that held the only power she never used against him. A faint light flickered inside the window, reflecting off the metal keyhole of the wooden box. Almost like the box itself was waiting, watching, holding a truth he had no idea existed. Emily's breath trembled as she stared at that distant glow. Somewhere deep in her fevered chest, a whisper formed. One day soon, he will regret not knowing what's inside. Emily woke with a gasp. Her whole body jerked upright as if she were still on the cold porch, still kneeling in the dark, still hearing the echo of the slam that pushed her out of her own home. Panic surged through her chest, sharp, breathless, disorienting. But then her surroundings came into focus. Soft lamplight, warm blankets, a cup of tea and a box of tissues beside her bed, an inhaler and a small bottle of prescribed pills on the nightstand. She wasn't home. She was in Hannah's guest room. Hannah Mitchell, 33, fiercely loyal, the one friend who always showed up when life hit hardest, sat in a chair beside the bed, watching Emily with worried eyes. You scared me, Hannah said gently. You were shaking in your sleep. Emily pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to calm her breathing. Her voice came out weak. How did I get here? Hannah's jaw tightened, a shadow crossing her face. You don't remember? Emily closed her eyes, trying to piece together the last clear moment. The cold porch, the trash bag. The locked door, Andrew's voice, her own coughs echoing in her ears. Then everything dissolved into darkness. I remember the porch, she whispered. After that, it's blurry. Hannah leaned forward, elbows on her knees. I texted you last night to check how you were feeling. You didn't answer. I tried calling. No response. I got this bad feeling and drove over. Emily swallowed, throat tight. When I pulled up, Hannah continued, voice shaking with anger she was barely suppressing, you were on the porch, barefoot, shivering, crying. You could barely breathe, Em. The door was locked. Lights were on, but no one answered when I rang. I wasn't going to waste time banging on it. She paused, her eyes softening as she looked at Emily. I wrapped you in my jacket, got you in the car, and drove straight to urgent care. Your fever was sky high. They gave you medicine, something for your breathing, told me to keep you hydrated and resting. They wanted to admit you, but you begged me to take you home. So, she gestured around. You're here. Emily blinked hard, tears gathering again. I didn't know you did all that. Hannah's lips pressed into a thin line. You were half conscious, Em. You kept apologizing. To me, to the nurse. Like all this was somehow your fault. Silence settled for a moment, thick and painful. Emily stared at the blanket, fingers tracing its edge. Thank you, she whispered. Hannah shook her head. You don't thank someone for saving you from a man who threw you out while you were sick. Emily flinched at the words. Hannah softened her tone, reaching out to adjust Emily's pillow. How long has it been like this? Emily looked down at her hands, small, shaking, tired. Not always, she said quietly. He wasn't always this cruel. I kept hoping he would change, that he'd see me again. Her voice cracked. I didn't think he could ever be this cruel. Hannah sighed softly, brushing Emily's hair back from her face. Your parents raised you to believe in goodness. That's not a flaw, but sometimes it blinds you. A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. Then Hannah said the words that reached deeper than any comfort or sympathy could. Your parents made you promise to protect what they left you. Do you remember? Emily closed her eyes. Yes, she remembered. A flash of memory took over, bright, sharp, vivid. She was 24, sitting in an office beside her lawyer. Her father, frail but still with a spark in his eyes, leaned forward and placed a folder in her hands. This house, he'd said, voice steady even with illness, is our legacy. You guard it, Emily. You keep it safe, and you never let anyone take it from you. Her mother had squeezed her hand and added softly, one day you might share your life with someone, but never give away your only anchor. Keep it in your name. Always. Emily remembered signing the documents, the pen shaking in her hand, her heart heavy with loss and responsibility. Her parents had trusted her, and she had kept their secret. She opened her eyes and looked at Hannah. Andrew thinks the house belongs to both of us, she murmured. He moved in after we married and started calling it our house. He never asked how I got it. I never corrected him. I just wanted to start fresh with love. Hannah nodded, her expression turning firm. Well, now it's time to start fresh with truth and strength. Emily sat up a little straighter, her fever easing, her breathing steadier. Something inside her, something that had been crushed under years of gentleness, began to rise again. A flicker of resolve, a quiet growing clarity. You can't go back there like nothing happened, Hannah continued. Not after what he did. You need to know exactly who you're standing against, and you can't plan your next move until you face the very thing your parents left you. Emily frowned slightly. What do you mean? Hannah held her gaze. Her voice dropped to a whisper filled with purpose. Emily, it's time you open the box. Emily's breath caught. The wooden box. The last connection to her parents. The one that held the deed. The one she locked the very morning he threw her out. The one still sitting inside the home he just tried to erase her from. I can't even reach it, Emily said softly. It's in the living room, and he's there. Not all the time, Hannah replied. You gave me a spare key years ago, remember? Just in case you ever locked yourself out. She paused. It's still in my kitchen drawer. Emily stared at her, realization dawning. Hannah added quietly, when you're strong enough to sit up for a bit, we'll go. We'll get the box. Your documents, your phone, whatever you need, in and out. No conversation, no warning. Emily swallowed. And the bag from the porch? She whispered. Hannah's eyes hardened. Already in my trunk, she said. I grabbed it when I carried you to the car. Emily stared ahead, heart trembling with fear and something new, anticipation. And in the quiet of Hannah's guest room, Emily finally understood. The box wasn't just her past. It was the key to everything that would come next. The wooden box hit the dining table with a force that startled even Emily. The sound echoed through Hannah's home, sharp, final, decisive, so unlike the quiet, gentle way Emily usually moved. Her hands, once trembling from fear and illness, now pushed the lid open with a determination that seemed to rise straight from the core of her hurt. Hannah stood beside her, arms crossed, protective and steady. On a nearby chair sat Emily's recovered phone and a folded pile of documents they'd grabbed from a small home file cabinet. They had driven to the house that afternoon while Andrew was at work. Hannah used the spare key, slipped them through the front door, and moved quickly. Emily had gone straight to the coffee table for the wooden box, her breathing shallow but controlled. Hannah had swept up her phone from the entryway table, unplugging it from the charger, then grabbed a few essential papers in the black trash bag from the corner of the porch. They didn't touch anything else. No messages, no notes, no confrontations. Now, safely back at Hannah's, they were ready to see what Emily had been avoiding for years. Take your time, Hannah whispered, though both of them knew time had already run out. Inside the box lay everything Emily had tried to keep buried for the sake of peace. The house deed, crisp and official, old letters from her parents filled with warmth and warnings, a business card from her family lawyer, tucked away years ago, and a slim USB drive. One Andrew never noticed because he never cared enough to ask. Emily reached for the deed first. Her fingers brushed over her name printed at the top, the ownership date, the signature of her lawyer. The ink felt heavier now, fuller. It didn't just represent a house, it represented her parents' trust, her own independence, her identity before she tried to blend herself into someone else's life. She swallowed hard. "I should have looked at this sooner," she murmured. Hannah placed a hand on her shoulder. "You weren't ready. You hoped Andrew loved you more than anything else. There's no shame in that." Emily blinked back the sting in her eyes. She didn't want to cry anymore. Not from fear, not from betrayal. She forced a deep breath and reached for the USB drive. "We need to see what's on this," she said. Hannah nodded. She brought her laptop to the table, set it down, and together they connected the drive. The screen lit up, showing folders Emily hadn't opened in years. Security software, backups, time-stamped clips from the front door camera her father had installed. Emily had forgotten that her father had set the system to automatically back up key footage onto the drive once a month. She'd never needed to look until now. Hannah opened the security program, and Emily clicked on the most recent files. Footage filled the screen. Her own front porch, her pale body kneeling, Andrew's hands shoving her out, the trash bag landing beside her, her collapsing, coughing, begging, the door slamming. There was no sound, but the images were enough. Emily's breath hitched violently. She reached a hand to her chest as if she could hold her heart together with her palm alone. Seeing it from the outside, seeing herself so weak, seeing Andrew so cold, felt like living the tragedy all over again. Hannah clenched her jaw. "He did this to you," she said quietly, "and now you have proof." Emily nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the screen. Proof. Proof she never wanted. Proof she never asked for. Proof she now desperately needed. Hannah clicked export, and together they saved the key clips onto the USB drive in a new folder labeled with the date. Concrete, organized, undeniable. "Next," Hannah said softly, "we check your messages." Emily handed over her phone with shaky fingers, and Hannah connected it to the laptop. Text logs appeared instantly. Hannah clicked through, searching for the hours leading up to the night of the betrayal. There it was. Emily's messages to Andrew. "Can you come home? I can't breathe well. Please, I need help." Messages that went unanswered. But Andrew's own phone, caught in the reflection of the footage, had buzzed nonstop. Hannah opened the synced screenshots Emily had saved months ago when she'd first felt something was off, back when she didn't yet know what she was looking at. Conversations, notifications, a familiar contact name. Vanessa. Hannah pulled up a more recent backup from Emily's cloud, showing a few screenshots taken when Emily accidentally glimpsed his lock screen in the past weeks. The same name, the same star beside it. Together, they saw Vanessa's messages that night, synced from Andrew's earlier cloud link Emily once helped him set up and never thought about again. "Are you doing it? She's dead weight. Make space. Stop living in her house. If you want me, prove it." Emily felt something inside her grow still. Very still. It wasn't shock. It wasn't panic. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was clarity. The kind that arrives when a person finally sees everything they ignored, everything they forgave, everything they tried to explain away. Emily sat straighter. Her breathing steadied. Her hands, once trembling, rested flat and firm against the table. "Are you ready?" Hannah asked softly. Emily reached for the business card in the box. Her lawyer's name, Robert Lane, looked back at her. He had been her parents' trusted attorney, the one who handled the house transfer, the one who reminded her years ago to keep records safe. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then a steady voice answered. "This is Robert Lane." Emily swallowed. "It's Emily. I need help." Robert's tone sharpened. "Tell me everything." She did. Every detail, every truth, every piece of evidence that now lay across the dining table. The deed, the footage, the messages, the night on the porch. When she finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end. Then, "Emily," Robert said quietly, "this is more than enough for an emergency order. Are you ready to end this?" Emily looked down at her hands. They were no longer shaking. Her voice was calm, steady, transformed. "Yes," she whispered, "I am." And far away in the house he thought he owned, Andrew was about to feel the first shift in the ground beneath him, a shift he would never see coming. 3 days later, Andrew yanked open the front door so hard it slammed against the wall. He stepped outside wearing nothing but boxers in frustration. Clutching a steaming mug of coffee, he nearly sloshed onto his chest. His hair was messy, his eyes half open, his face twisted in irritation. Someone had been pounding on the door like the place was on fire. "What?" he barked. But the moment he saw who stood on the porch, the sound died in his throat. An officer, a process server, and Emily, standing tall, steady, and silent. At her side stood a suited man, calm and composed. Robert Lane, her family lawyer. For a split second, Andrew forgot how to breathe. What is this?" he muttered, tightening his grip on his coffee. Before he could take a step back, the officer raised a sealed envelope. "Are you Andrew Carter?" Andrew blinked, confused. "Yeah." The officer handed him papers. "This is a temporary protective order and an emergency order granting your wife exclusive possession of this property." Andrew stared at the documents like they were written in a language he didn't understand. "Exclusive what? This is my house. You can't just—" Before the officer could answer, the process server stepped forward. "Andrew Carter?" "I already said yes," Andrew snapped. "You've been served," the server replied, handing him another stack, thicker, heavier. Divorce papers, summons for a full hearing, details of the evidence attached. Andrew staggered back a step. His coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the porch, hot liquid splashing over his toes. He didn't even feel the burn. His eyes shot to Emily. "What is this?" he demanded, voice cracking. Emily didn't blink. Robert Lane adjusted his glasses and stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, you are hereby notified that the property you are standing on belongs solely to my client, Emily Carter. The title is in her name alone. Based on your actions and the evidence submitted, a judge has granted her temporary exclusive occupancy. You are ordered to vacate the property within 48 hours. Andrew laughed, loud, shaky, desperate. "This is ridiculous. We both live here. It's our house." Robert shook his head slowly. "No, sir. Legally, it never was." He pulled a copy of the deed from his folder and held it up briefly. Andrew's eyes caught his wife's name, hers alone. Emily looked at Andrew, her face calm, too calm. A kind of calm that comes after the breaking, a silence sharp enough to cut. Andrew's jaw dropped. "Emily, you never told me you owned the house." She held his gaze. "You never asked." He felt sick, like the ground was tilting beneath him, like the world he built inside this house was suddenly slipping away piece by piece. "You can't do this," he said, voice rising. "Emily, come on. We can talk about this." "No," Robert said firmly. "This isn't a discussion. This is a court order. You have 48 hours to remove your belongings and vacate the property. After that, any attempt to re-enter without permission will be considered trespassing and a violation of the protective order." Andrew's face reddened. "You're kicking me out? Over one argument? You're overreacting." "One argument?" Robert repeated, raising a brow. Emily reached into her folder and handed Robert the USB drive. "I have footage," she said softly, "of everything." Andrew froze. Footage. His face drained of color. The officer exchanged a glance with the lawyer. Robert continued, voice clear and sharp. "Security footage from the front porch showing you physically forcing your wife outside while she was visibly ill, discarding her belongings in a trash bag, and locking her out. We also submitted her medical report from that night, as well as records of your communications with another woman, Vanessa, and your failure to respond when your wife texted for help." Andrew's breath came faster, bordering on a panic. "You went through my phone?" he shouted. "That's illegal. You can't just—" "You synced your own accounts to shared devices, Mr. Carter," Robert replied coolly. But that's for the judge to address, not for this doorstep. Andrew looked between them, panic rising like a tide. This is crazy, Emily. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. You were sick. I didn't know what to do. You knew, Emily said quietly. You just didn't care. He flinched. Her voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was done. He took a step toward her. Emily, please, let me explain. Robert moved between them instantly. Sir, do not approach my client. Any attempt to contact her directly will be considered a violation of the protective order. You will have the opportunity to explain yourself in court. Andrew threw up his hands. Emily, please listen to me. Emily's expression remained unchanged. The softness he once took for granted was gone. Her eyes were steady, cold, unshakable. Explain it to the judge, she said. Her words fell like a gavel. Andrew stood frozen on the porch, papers slipping from his grasp, scattering across the ground like broken pieces of the life he never appreciated. His breath came fast, shallow, wild. Emily turned without another glance and walked toward Hannah's waiting car. Andrew's voice cracked behind her. Emily, don't leave. Don't do this. But she kept walking. She didn't look back. And just before she reached the car, something inside her whispered. The courtroom would reveal even more than he expected. A week later, Andrew slammed the courthouse bathroom door so hard the mirror rattled. His reflection stared back at him, sweaty, red-eyed, wild. He looked nothing like the charming, confident man he used to present to the world. His chest heaved as he clutched a stack of court documents against him, the crumpled papers damp from his shaking hands. He sank to the floor, his back hitting the cold wall. A grown man crumbling in a courthouse bathroom. That was the intensity of his downfall. Outside the door, he could still hear voices echoing from the corridor. Whispers, murmurs, pity mixed with disgust. Everyone in that courtroom had seen at least part of the footage. They'd watched the silent video of him dragging a sick woman, his wife, out into the night. They'd seen the trash bag, the door slam, the way he'd turned his back without a second thought. Every step he took in that courtroom earlier felt like walking through fire. He sat stiffly while Emily remained calm beside her lawyer. The judge had watched the video, listened to testimony, reviewed the deed and the financial records. When the judge denied him any share of the house, declaring it separate property, inherited solely in Emily's name, Andrew felt his world cave in. When the court ordered him responsible for the credit card debt he'd run up in his name, and acknowledged Emily's documented payments as contributions he had to pay back or cover on his own, his stomach twisted in shame and disbelief. And the worst part? He had no one left to pretend he was the victim. He wiped his face with shaking hands and pushed himself off the floor. When he stepped back into the hallway, people stared. Some whispered. Some looked away quickly. He caught pieces of their muttered conversations. That's the one who pushed his sick wife out. I saw the video. Unbelievable. His wife owned the whole house. He tried to claim half. But the line that hit hardest came from two strangers near the exit. I heard his girlfriend dumped him after the video got around. His breath hitched at that. Vanessa. He swallowed hard. He had left the courthouse earlier during a short recess to call her. Desperate, panicked, needing someone to tell him he wasn't a complete failure. She answered on the second ring. What do you want? She said coldly. Baby, it's bad, he whispered. Everything is falling apart. She's kicking me out. The judge just... I have nowhere to go. Andrew, she interrupted. I told you to leave her. I didn't tell you to get caught abusing her. I didn't, he stammered. Oh, please, she snapped. Everyone at your job saw the footage. Someone from the office group chat sent it to me. My friends have seen it too. I can't be tied to this. You're bad for my image. His heart dropped into his stomach. Vanessa, don't do this. He could barely breathe. I did everything for you. No, she replied flatly. You tried, and you failed. I'm not ruining my life for yours. Then she hung up. No explanation, no sympathy, no goodbye, just silence. A silence that echoed now in the courthouse as he stumbled toward the exit. Outside, the day felt too bright for his collapsing world. The air felt heavy. He dragged himself across the lot, clutching the papers like they were pieces of a broken life he wasn't ready to release. His phone buzzed. Work group chat. He braced himself and opened it. Screenshots, messages, people laughing. Someone had taken still images from the courtroom screens and from the security footage, then added captions. Mr. Motivation kicking out his sick wife. Guess who won't be getting promoted? Words followed. Abusive, coward, disgusting. His stomach twisted. His legs nearly buckled. He walked faster, trying to escape the rush of shame biting at him from every direction. But shame followed him into the empty motel room he rented that night, a cheap single bed pressed against peeling wallpaper. He dropped his belongings on the floor and slid down beside the bed, burying his face in his hands as the weight of everything crashed onto him. Homeless, at least from the life he thought he owned. Job on the line, with HR requesting a meeting the next day. No friends reaching out, no mistress to comfort him, no wife to fix things. The motel room smelled of stale air and old carpet. The fluorescent light flickered above him, casting uneven shadows across the walls. He felt trapped inside a punishment he never saw coming. His breath quivered. How did it get this bad? He whispered into his palms. But he knew. Deep inside, he knew. Emily had always been kinder than he deserved, gentler than he respected, more patient than he appreciated. She covered bills he ignored, created stability he took credit for, and still he treated her like dead weight. He destroyed everything. And karma didn't come quietly. It roared, it burned, it stripped him bare. He curled his fingers around the documents again, gripping them so tightly the edges tore. His chest shook with sobs he couldn't control. Andrew Carter, once proud, arrogant, entitled, now cried alone in a motel room with nothing left but regret. And as his tears finally slowed, a thought formed. A desperate, frightened thought that he could no longer ignore. If Emily had gone this far, how much further could she go? The voiceover slid gently into the moment, cold and quiet. There was only one thing left for Emily to do. And somewhere else in the city, Emily was preparing the final step, a step that would end everything he had left connected to her. The first clang of metal echoed through the house like a bold declaration. Emily tightened the last screw on the brand new deadbolt, her hands steady, her expression calm. The locksmith beside her packed his tools, nodding once before stepping back. New locks on all exterior doors, he said, and the alarm code has been reset. Only you have it. Thank you, Emily replied. He left and the front door clicked shut behind him. The intensity of the moment filled the room. The final lock replacing the final piece of a life she no longer owed to anyone. She stood back and looked at the front door, now secured with upgraded locks, new alarm sensors, and a fresh code. No trace of the past remained in the way it opened or closed. No trace of him. The house felt different now, lighter, cleaner, peaceful. Sunlight streamed softly across the polished floors, illuminating the same living room where Emily once adjusted her parents' photo with trembling hands. The same room where quiet devotion lived. The same room where she once believed love alone could hold a marriage together. She walked to the center of the room and sat in the exact spot where she had stood that morning with the wooden box, afraid to open it. Her posture was straight now, her breathing calm. Except now there was no hidden tension beneath her ribs. No fear, no anxiety, only a quiet certainty that she had reclaimed every part of her life. Emily scanned the room with new eyes. Andrew's expensive gadgets, gone. His designer clothes and shoes, bagged and donated, his limited edition watch collection, passed to charity auctions through a local organization, his gaming consoles and electronics, given to children's homes and youth centers that actually needed them. Anything with his name on it had left the house, this time not forced, not thrown, not cruelly tossed like the trash bag he assaulted her with. This time, she was the one who decided what stayed and what went. She walked toward the dining table, where a single black trash bag sat, the same one Andrew had thrown at her feet, the same one she knelt beside on the porch, coughing, begging, breaking. Hannah had washed and folded the clothes inside, but Emily had asked her to leave the bag itself untouched. Emily touched the bag gently, not with sadness, but with understanding. This, she whispered, was the last moment you ever had power over me. She picked up the bag and stepped outside. The air was cool, but not cold. Her steps were steady as she placed the bag carefully in the back seat of her car. This was her final symbolic act. Not revenge, not cruelty. Closure. She drove to the courthouse where Andrew had fallen apart just days before. She parked, stepped out, and carried the bag to the front steps. Emily set it down, straightened the tag she had attached to it, and whispered the only words she needed. Return to sender. On the tag, in simple, neat handwriting, were the words, "For Andrew, everything you tried to throw away." She didn't wait for anyone to see. She didn't need an audience. This wasn't a spectacle. This was healing. When she returned home, the house greeted her like a place reborn. She walked inside, closed the door behind her, and went to the wooden box resting on the coffee table. The same wooden box she had locked the morning before everything changed. The same one that had fueled her courage in court. Emily ran her fingers across the grain. Soft, warm, familiar. She lifted the lid one last time. Inside lay the deed, her parents' letters, the USB drive holding the exported footage, the business card that started it all, pieces of her strength, pieces of her past, pieces of the journey she had walked alone for far too long. She picked up the deed and pressed it gently to her heart, honoring everything her parents had taught her. Then she placed it back and closed the lid slowly, deliberately, with the finality of someone sealing a chapter that would never open again. A soft voice rose in the background, her own inner voice, wiser, stronger, transformed. Some people learn your worth when you stop giving them access to it. Emily locked the wooden box. For the last time, she put the key on the mantel beside her parents' picture, letting it shine under the warm light. Then she stood in the center of her renewed home, letting peace settle over her like a blanket. Her life was hers again, her voice, her choices, her future. But just as the quiet wrapped around her, a soft thought surfaced, a hint of one final thread left unpulled. The voiceover whispered, gentle yet deliberate, there was only one thing left for Emily to do. Not for Andrew, for herself, to live. The screen held for a beat, inviting curiosity, a breath of silence, a hint of possibility. Then the final closing message. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.